Hello and welcome to the third in our series, Planning for the Unexpected, presented by the Older Women's Network of New South Wales. I'm Amanda Armstrong. And just to remind our loyal viewers, so far in this series we've covered wills and getting your documents in order. And in episode 2 we had a very interactive session on the Swedish art of death cleaning, or decluttering as it's usually called. Now today our subject is financial literacy. How is your financial literacy? Obviously, it's very topical in these times of rising prices in all directions. Our session today is going to be general in nature, and we do encourage you to get professional advice at the appropriate time. If you're watching live, you can pop your question in the chat, and we'll do our very best to answer it during the session. Now, today, Alice Mantel is our resident guest. She is a lawyer with a background in family and elder law. Welcome back, Alice.
Thanks, Amanda. Happy to be joining you in conversation again today. As you pointed out, I've got a legal background rather than a financial background. But when I was researching my book, Every Woman's Guide to Retirement, I did spend a lot of time thinking about finances. And also, when I was in practice as a family lawyer, one of the constant issues that arose was that very often the women that I saw had very little idea about their own personal finances or their family's finances in general.
Hold on a minute. We're in the 21st century. Most women are in paid work. They have superannuation. They have credit cards. It's hard to believe.
But I'm afraid it's very much true. It's not really a question of the age of the woman. It's there. Of course, look, there are some women who are very competent at managing their finances, particularly single women who know exactly what they're doing. But in my view, they are still the exception. There are reasons for that. It begins at school. So young women are encouraged to have credit cards and to spend money online buying stuff, right? So they have credit cards and they have the afterpay scenario. So they just spend. They also think that money is boring. Why should I be concerned about that? So then when they get to their relationship, having a serious relationship, they're not really that concerned about it. And look, this is not just a heterosexual relationships. This is all relationships. The duties that each partner does tends to be split up in couples.
But what you're really saying is there's still very much a gendered attitude to money and how women think about money.
Look, often in relationships, women are busy bringing up kids, holding down jobs, looking after the household, and the partner, cares for the financial things. And look, this is the same in double income families as much as it is in single income. Let me say, and the man is very happy to take on the financial side of it, because controlling finances is a way of controlling the relationship. So it's one aspect of coercive control is that financial control. That's at the worst level of it. But let's just look at an ordinary situation. The woman is working. She puts money her income into a joint account. She takes money out for her own expenses and for buying the kids' clothes. And as long as she's got enough to manage on, she's fine. She's happy about that. And she's happy for her partner to take on the financial side of things, because that's just one less thing for her to do.
Let's look now then at the kind of life course story of money. So are women's concerns different from men's?
Oh, I certainly think in that later stage that's the case. And the reason for that is that the majority of women come to retirement with far less financial resources than men. They have a lot less superannuation, and that is a result of they take time out looking after their children, so they have part-time jobs for quite a long part of their career, and they also actually get paid less. And that is why we need to actually maintain this sort of impetus to getting equality in our employment situation. Women probably don't think about it until they get close to retirement, and then they start to think about, I've still got a mortgage and I'm about to retire, and I want to have a roof over my head. I don't want to be a homeless person. And it's one of the things that I really maintain is that having a roof over your head is so important, because it's a protection against poverty in old age. having your own home gives you emotional, physical, and financial security as you become more vulnerable.
And this, of course, is why housing and housing security is such a frontline issue for the Older Women's Network.
Absolutely.
Now, this issue of still having a mortgage when you retire, of course, is becoming increasingly common. It's not a very secure position to be in, is it?
That's true. And it's this research says that's going to be happening to more and more people because of the high prices of Australian housing. They have very big mortgages and they still haven't paid them off at the time that they retire.
And the other problem is for people who rent, the cost of rent, as we've seen, vacancy rates very low, rents going up.
Being a renter is a very insecure position to be in, particularly once you get to a fixed income like an aged pension. And as a long-term renter, you're very much at risk of becoming homeless if the rent rises. And that's the situation at the moment. Since 2020, the average rents have increased by over 35%. That is an enormous amount. Our pensions have not increased anything like that.
That's right. Pensions haven't increased, salaries haven't increased at that rate. So what can a woman do about that?
There probably are a few options. A lot of women continue working past their pension age, that's 67, and they keep working to pay off that loan, or they will access their superannuation to pay that loan. You can access your super once you have retired and you reach the age of somewhere between 55 and 60. So, but people need to realise that they can continue to work after they have retired. An active retirement is leaving your your employer and changing the way you are employed. So if you've been working for the same employer for, say, 5 years as a full-time employee, you then say, I am retired, but I'm going to continue working for that employer, but on a casual basis. So you have officially retired, but you can continue to work. And you can continue to work and get super until you are 75 years of age.
So it's very important to understand superannuation,
Absolutely.
which is a bit more homework for all of us.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if, say, you own a home or you're paying a mortgage with a partner and something happens? Your partner dies, you're left with the mortgage, or in a case of domestic violence, you have to move out.
Domestic violence is certainly not a good situation to be in, particularly because women's refuges are absolutely up to capacity all the time. So my suggestion would be that you contact the National Family Violence Hotline. Their number is 1800 737 732. Give them a ring and they will give you some information about what next to do and help you with trying to find some temporary accommodation.
Yes, I'm just going to repeat that number, 1800 737 732. It's a good place to start for information.
Yeah.
So, getting back to this problem of the mortgage, you're still obliged to keep paying the mortgage somehow. How does that work?
That's true. So the next thing to do is to be contacting your bank and ask for their financial hardship section and tell them about what's happened. And they can make arrangements to put the payments on hold. This is another reason why women need to be very well informed about who is their lender for their home loan, who has their bank accounts. It's very important to do that.
And I note at least one major bank is now advertising a service for women who find themselves in this situation.
Yeah.
So, Alice, this is a strangely controversial thing. I don't think it should be, but should a woman have, in a relationship, have their own bank account?
I'm very well aware of that. I've certainly had friends who were shocked to think that they should have their own bank account. I am absolutely strongly of the belief that a woman should have her own bank account for a number of reasons. On the good side of a relationship, having your own bank account means that you can go and spend money exactly on whatever you want. So if you want to buy the kids some extra presents, or if you want to go and have a facial or have a holiday, you've got some money behind you. In a more serious stage, such as having to leave your home in a domestic violence situation, very suddenly you've got a bit of financial backup. So I think every woman should have their own bank account.
And of course, if your partner passes away suddenly, at least you have access to money until all the finances of the joint account are sorted out.
Yep.
So it's a very sensible thing to do. Now, apart from understanding our loans, our bank accounts, is there anything else we can do to better manage our money?
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, Amanda. Now, right now, can you tell me, do you know how much you owe on your credit card right now?
Well, Alice, actually, I have to tell you, I don't have a credit card. I have a debit card. And the reason for that is I got into a bit of financial hot water with a credit card when I was much younger. It was a salutary lesson. And so these days I just have a debit card and try and live within my means.
You would have to be the absolute exception on that because most women certainly have a credit card. And of course, the best thing to do is to pay off your credit card interest as soon as you possibly can because there's such high rates on credit cards. They're 18 to 20%. And you need to pay it off promptly or you'll get a late payment fee and that just makes it worse.
Yes, that's right. It was the trick of paying off by that due date that got me into trouble. So it's a critical thing if you have a credit card to do that.
Okay, I've got a next question. Thinking about the next 2 weeks, can you tell me what payments you are likely to be facing? I'm not asking for an amount, I'm just saying, can you tell me what sort of payments they're going to be?
Okay, so I know there will be my phone bill will come through. I know that the water and gas and electricity must be due sort of in the next few weeks because I haven't had any of those for a while. So yeah, they're the big bills coming through in a few weeks, I think.
So I assume you can meet those, but what about if you had an unexpected emergency? Say suddenly you needed the tyres on your car needed replacing or you needed to go to the dentist. Do you think you could manage that as well?
Well, I guess if they weren't too horrendous, perhaps a tyre or maybe a filling. But yes, there is real bill shock with car expenses and dental expenses as well.
Absolutely.
So hopefully none of those are in the pipeline.
So that's one of the reasons about needing to stay informed about your income. So usually we know about the regular expenses that come up, the council rates, the strata levies, the electricity and phone bills. But we also need to keep track of our discretionary spending. So the discretionary spending actually is things like going out for dinner, buying some clothes, that sort of thing. And that can be really tempting and cut into the amount of available income you've got, particularly when you're on a fixed income.
It really is the hot topic of conversation now. Lots of people are struggling with that. We're certainly hearing that here at OWN.
Yeah.
But, it's hard to know really what people can do about that.
Well, there are the obvious things to do that is obviously happening. We're buying cheaper cuts of meat. We're buying generic brands of labels.
Giving up on little luxuries.
Little luxuries, absolutely. But the fact is that our credit card costs and interest rates have not changed at all. Mortgage rates haven't changed at all. So we really need to be putting our effort into paying off those debts.
And for many retired people, we're on a fixed income. It's difficult to get a job, even though, that might be a good strategy to top up funds. It's quite difficult as an older person to get a job, a part-time job.
Sure.
Even if we're capable of working.
Yeah, look, it's hard not to feel a bit typecast. But we are lucky in this country. There are some concessions that you get as you get older. Not many, let me say. Take the Oval card in New South Wales, for seniors, $2.50 per day to travel anywhere on public transport. You get concessions travelling into regional areas and concessions in other states. There are also, concession rates when you go to the movies and concerts, like I sometimes do. And pensioners, that is, people who are actually on the age pension, get a raft more of concessions. They get reduced council rates, reduced car registration and driver's licence renewal. There are some concessions there.
Yes, when money is tight, people do tend to pull back, stay home, don't go out, perhaps lose their social connections. But I guess at this point I should mention all the wonderful information in the Downtime newsletter, OWN's newsletter.
Absolutely.
Which has a lot of information about all the free activities that are on. So, there's no need to stay home. get your Opal card out and look for some of these lovely free activities that are on to keep yourself engaged and out in the community. Now, the other really big change we haven't talked about with finances is we no longer have passbooks and checkbooks, things that we've all grown up with, written bank statements that really help us kind of keep in control of our finances. Bank branches used to be on every high street where you just go and do your banking.
Yes.
And we know bank branches are closing everywhere, and it makes it very, very difficult for people who do not have a computer or a smartphone and they're used to managing their money in these ways. It's a really big problem.
I absolutely agree with you about trying to keep track of banking information with an online account. I certainly have a lot of bank bills that just arrive online and not in the mail. And I find that I tend to just sweep them aside and put them in the to-do pile. And I have found in the past that I would just forget about them, and then of course I was up for a late payment penalty because I'd forgotten about it. So what I do now, I've decided to get a bit more organised. So regular payments, the phone bills, the internet bills, those sort of things, I just put on direct debit. That is, they just automatically come out of the account when they're requested by the company. But that I couldn't manage if I had to think about it all.
That's right, and you need a computer
to do,
or at the very least a smartphone to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
And you of course have to feel comfortable with doing things online. And I know that a lot of older people aren't very familiar or very trusting using a computer to do their banking, even buying tickets or filling in forms. It's hard.
It is absolutely true. I actually did some research on this topic because I thought that can't be the case. And yet there are approximately 2 million Australians, and not just older people, a variety of people, who are not connected to the internet and who do not use a computer or a laptop at home. If that happens to be one of our viewers today, or you know someone like that, I would say to you that it is absolutely vital to be computer literate these days.
And there are many courses that you can do, and there's phone lines you can call to get help. And so it's a really good idea to see what resources might be available to help you move things online. And don't be embarrassed about it. We all struggle with this.
Yeah. If you don't own a computer, every library will give you free access to one of theirs. And there are many community courses that are run, they're free, to help you get started. It's absolutely worth suffering a small amount of embarrassment, and I think that's true, to achieve an absolutely essential skill in the 21st century. If you can manage a mobile phone, you can manage a basic computer, is my view.
Now, we should also say that once you go online, you are at risk of scams.
Yeah.
Scams are increasing every year. You'll get emails, you'll get text messages that appear to be legitimate and are not, asking for your personal information. Never give any personal information, passwords, numbers, online. It's absolutely critical to be vigilant about this.
Absolutely good advice, I would say, because scammers are becoming so much more sophisticated these days. And we as human beings tend to be quite trusting. So don't be embarrassed if you get caught out by a scammer. It's happened to all of us. But today we're going to get some advice from a qualified financial advisor who's going to help us about how we can become better managers of our finances. I'd like to introduce Jeanette Mosley now. Jeanette is a financial advisor with Oracle Advisory Group, who are a wealth advisory firm with offices in New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland.
And here's Jeanette now.
Thank you. Hi Jeanette, how are you?
Good morning. Thank you for that, Amanda.
So, Jeanette, tell us about, thank you for sharing your experience and coming to us from your Wagga Wagga office. I'm really pleased that today we're going to be getting and it's a view from a regional area rather than just a metropolitan. Perhaps you could start by giving us a bit of an introduction about your employer, Oracle Advisory Group.
Yes, well, Oracle commenced in 1987, and during 2017-18, currently is named Oracle Advisory Group. So we're an independent wealth advisory group. We're not aligned with any banks or any other institutions, and based, as you say, in 15 locations. And we're here to help people with financial planning, accountancy, mortgage broking, and general financial needs. And we like to build long-term, lasting relationships with our clients, encompassing all of those facets of their life.
What do you see the role of a financial advisor as being?
I think one of the most important things is to be a good listener, because we really need to listen to what a client is wanting us to help them with. You know, what are their goals, their aspirations, what are their problems or issues that we need to help them address. So unless you actually listen to the client and hear their particular concerns, you know, that's the way to start going forward. So after we can document all their current issues, we can then look at researching how to address those, to provide them with a financial plan.
What kind of information do you need from the client?
Before I meet with a client, basically to draw a plan, I need all of their important documents, all of their financial matters. So things like bank account details, pay slips, superannuation fund statements, insurance statements, share statements, mortgage details, interest rates, all that kind of thing. So once we get all that together, we can put their client profile together, as we call it, which gives us a statement of their current position. So then we know what we're dealing with, what we have, what the liabilities are, what the income and debts are. So we incorporate this into their financial plan. So it's a very good record for them to put with, the statement of advice is a very good record to put with their will, for example, as it's very useful for their estate if they need to see, you know, if somebody passes away, what did they have? Where is it? You know, it's a record for them to say, this is where everything is and this is what they have.
I have to ask you, have you followed this piece of advice?
Yes, I have actually, because I think it's very important to have all your essential documents together and for your family to be able to find them and know where everything is. So I put all my things together in an old briefcase, and my son knows where that is so that he can go and look for it.
It's a good idea. What do you think are the most common reasons that a client might come to see you?
Well, as you can see, I live in a regional area, so a lot of farmers and families, they want to know about how to plan for their future. You know, over time, things like, you know, older farmers maybe not being able to manage the priorities of the farm anymore. So how can they plan for when they will leave the farm? So I help them to draw a plan, work with their accountants to do that sort of thing. But also, Wagga's a large regional city, so we have got the city type clients, and they might be looking at growing their superannuation tax effectively, having insurance protection, you know, in case they can't work anymore or something happens in their business. So savings and growing their investments for their future retirement is very important to them.
And what about if there's that situation where there's been a bereavement in the family, you know, where someone's lost their spouse?
So that's often a case where the lady or husband would need to learn how to cope financially on their own. Sometimes that's the first time that they actually come to a financial planner, because they suddenly say, you know, my partner, you know, handled all this before, and we don't know what to do, what we have, where it is. So we have to start that diagnosis, that fact-finding stage at that point.
How are you able to help women particularly with this sort of situation?
I think women particularly need to be comfortable that they can cope, that they can manage. So having someone to listen to them, and to know what their issues are, then helps us to address resolving that for them. So I often talk to them about diversification of their funds, about asset allocation, depreciation, liabilities, liquidity. So these are all terms that they may have heard in the past, or their husband may have heard, or they may have gone to their accountants with their husband, and they just basically like at a tennis match, what are they talking about?
Well, you've got me there. I've heard these terms too, but I'm not sure that I would know how to apply them to my situation.
Yeah, well, that's my role, to make sure that the client that I have in front of me understands these terms and their situation, so that they can talk about these things to their other professional alliances that they have, their accountants, their solicitors. They understand what's happening. They don't just sign on dotted lines without knowing what they're doing. So I think it's really important to educate clients and help them understand and get a confidence in talking to other professional people about their own personal matters that will affect their life.
Yeah. If I came to see you about getting a financial plan done for me, what would you be preparing for me?
Well, we'd start at the beginning by having a good chat, and I'm sure with you and I that wouldn't be any problem. So I think opening up, feeling comfortable, really telling me about your goals and aspirations going forward. And then we look at your hard copy information to see what your actual situation was. And then we'd agree on what you wanted me to help you with. I would then go away and research how best to help you. There's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes, and eventually document that for you. And you'd be able to see then where you're at now with your financial matters, where you will be if you took on the recommendations we gave to you, and it would give you sort of a time lapse how things could be if you implemented other activities.
Do you think there's much of a difference between male and female clients in terms of what they want to do?
Not really. Everyone wants a good return and wants to work out the best for them. Both men and women, they want everything to give them the best that they can in the time that they have.
I suppose preparing for family, for their families as well, is kind of an important part of that planning.
Yes, it is. I think people need to be able to look at everything towards the family, the estate, how things will be passed on, how they want things to be passed on to make sure these things happen.
So you're planning for the long term as well as both short term and long term goals?
Absolutely. And the sooner you start, the better. But if you've got longer period to plan for, you can certainly take advantage of what we call dollar cost averaging, where your money works harder for you over time. You're putting money in at different times, so the funds grow at different rates for you, depending on the market at the time. If you've left it till the last minute, we can still have a look at how we can best help you to see what you've got and how we can work with it for you.
Okay. So some people might be a bit nervous about going to see a financial advisor because advisors have kind of developed a bit of a reputation for running scams. At this moment, I'm thinking about the late Melissa Caddick, for example, who took millions of dollars from her family and friends and pretended to invest their funds in fake investments. Is there anything a person can do to check on the credibility of their financial advisor?
Yes, there absolutely is. Legislation's changed a lot over the years, and ASIC has a financial advisors register where anyone can check on the history and qualifications of a financial advisor. For example, Melissa Caddick's business did not hold a financial services license. Okay. So that would have been a red flag straight away. You can just go into ASIC, look up the financial advisors register, type in the advisor's name, and it will give you their details, who they're licensed with, who their employer is, their background, their experience, and whether they're members of financial associations and so on. So see, when an advisor joins a licensee company, which is then registered with ASIC, it carries out a lot of background checks, like police checks, educational history, work experience, qualifications. So all that's done to protect the consumer. Mm-hmm. And we also adhere to codes of ethics and do, lots of continuing professional development training during the year. And furthermore, our licensee audits our work every year so that they ensure we're meeting the professional standards and doing the right things for clients.
Okay, so can you give me an example of where you've had a successful outcome with a client?
Well, I've been an advisor for over 20 years, so hopefully I've had quite a few successes. One particular moving memory I have is of a lady who came in to see actually a different different professional in the office, and they were crying in his office, and he called me in, and he says, "Oh, this poor lady, she doesn't think she can survive now. She's on her own. She's not going to have enough money to live on, and she's really distressed. Can you come and help?" And after talking to her, we were able to work out that she actually was going to be quite well off in retirement. She was going to be fine. She just didn't understand her funds and what she had and how they worked. So she went out very happy. So that's just one case, for example.
So do you think you only need to be retired when you come to see a financial advisor?
Oh, no, not at all. As I said before, the younger the better, really. But at any stage, you can gain from having some education in financial matters, understanding terminology and so on. I mean, I had another client, again, that, just didn't understand any terms. And she was going to an accountant to sort out her husband's matters and the solicitors. And by having just an hour and a half with me and a really good chat about situations, she was then more comfortable to go to those other people and talk about her matters. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, so Jeanette, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. I think I certainly have a better understanding of what a financial advisor does and understanding how you could actually assist me to better manage my finances. Thank you today.
That's fine, Alice. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, we should say that financial advice can cost a few $1,000s, so you really need to assess whether that's a helpful thing for you. There are alternatives for information like seminars, courses, books from the library to check out first. If you find yourself in financial trouble, there are also lots of help available. The Salvation Army has free financial counselling, as does Lifeline, and there is the National Debt Hotline if you're in difficulty with debt. So make sure you check those out. Now, Alice, let's move on to something that we haven't mentioned so far, and it's sort of hard to achieve at the moment, and that is saving.
Oh, I would say that saving should be about 20% of your budget. Now, I know that budget is something of a dirty word, sort of the word that causes fear and loathing amongst many people. But let me say, that is a word that should allow you to anticipate being in control of your finances. There is this theory about saving, and it's called the 3-bucket strategy.
Oh, okay. Is that where you sort of have a bucket list of all the things you want to do before you die? That sort of thing?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
The bucket strategy is about mentally putting your income into buckets to pay for different expenses. So around about 50% of your income should go into the basic expenses bucket. That's sort of things like paying your rent, your mortgage, your basic bills. Obviously, as these expenses rise, you are going to have less in your other buckets. And don't forget that your credit card should go into that essential expenses bucket.
Okay, bucket 1. That seems like the most important one. What are the other buckets?
So the biggest bucket is for your essentials. The second bucket is for about 30% of your income. That's the discretionary spending bucket. So that's the buying clothes, going out and doing those nice to have things. Now that, of course, is the most flexible thing, so that if you actually need more money for your essential expenses, the discretionary expenses have to be reduced.
Now, okay, what's in the third bucket then?
And this is the final 20% of your income that you deliberately set aside here. So there are a couple of options here. You could either decide to just automatically debit 20% of your income into a separate account, or if you're really dedicated, you could put that money into your mortgage offset account. That's quite a good place to put it. I always think it's a good idea to set yourself a goal for this savings account. And so, I want to buy a new car, or I want to have an overseas holiday, because saving requires a lot of discipline, and it's a lot easier if you just have that amount automatically coming out of your income before you even have time to spend it on something else.
Well, yes, that sounds great in theory. 20% it can be a lot for some people, especially at the moment.
I agree. I don't know whether that's realistic at all. It's possibly too much for most people, particularly on a fixed income. But even if you are putting aside, say, $100 a month in a do not touch account, by the end of the year, you will have saved $1,200. And that's a great start to having a holiday. So you're not just putting your holiday on a credit card.
All right, Alice, that's very helpful, but I guess I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of homework and research that I have to do. My life is fairly complicated at the moment. I thought that this latter part of my life will be a little bit more relaxing, but it's proving not to be the case.
Look, I do understand where you're coming from, but I'm not sure that you can get into set and forget just yet. When you're part of a couple, we tend to divide up the responsibilities. I do this, you do that. It's one of the benefits of being in a couple, in a relationship, obviously. But what happens, okay? What happens if the other party suddenly becomes ineffective for some reason? They may become very ill, they may have an accident, they may run away with the postman. Then are you able to find all the documents that you may need? Do you know, for example, who your house insurer is?
Yes, this is a really important question because, of course, in some version or other, it's going to happen to anyone who's in a relationship. So, no, I know it's sort of in the filing cabinet and I know that it is paid, but no, I'm not fully on top of that, I admit.
But you probably have your insurance on an automatic rollover. Is that the sort of thing?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But okay, can I say that you suggest that you do something different next time? When you next have to renew your house insurance, your car insurance, your health insurance, why don't you both sit down and talk to each other about whether you're getting a good deal if you're renewing? As a couple, talking about insurance and your general money issues is one way to ensure that not only are you getting a good deal from your provider, but that you actually know what's happening. And I'm going to tell you a little story about this. Just recently, I got my car insurer sent the renewal form in, and of course I went straight into pay, as you do. And then I looked at it and I thought, gee, this is an amazing amount of money. And we were sitting there with my partner looking at the TV, and there's this particular car insurer ad that comes on, or house insurer ad that comes on, and really irritates me. And I said to my partner, he knows this ad's giving me the shits. So, he knows that these ads irritate me. So, and he said, and then I said, I wonder whether they would offer me a better deal on my car insurance. So we actually went and talked about car insurance, and my partner said, look, just because those ads irritate you, there's no reason why you shouldn't at least consider if they can offer you a better deal on your car renewal. So I went to one of these comparison sites, and there are comparison sites for every kind of insurance you can imagine, but I went for one on the car insurance. And sure enough, let me just say, I have renewed my car insurance with a different provider.
All right, so sitting down, having that conversation, as heavy duty or uncomfortable as it may be for some of us, is a good thing to do.
It's absolutely essential, really, not on just car insurance things. I'll give you an example from when I was in practice. This lady came to see me. It was early in the new year, about January, February, and her husband had died shortly after Christmas, unexpectedly. Not very old person. She was absolutely devastated because she was left with 2 children and managing their finances all by herself. And until that time, that was devastating in itself. Let's just be accurate about that. But she was also devastated because she had, up to that point, thought that they were in a pretty good financial situation. Mortgage was doing well. They had an investment unit, which was, doing well, she thought. And she had always thought her husband was a good, hard-working person who often came home late from work because he was working so hard. It was only early in that year, in the January of that year, when she got a letter from the bank saying, they were going to foreclose to sell the investment unit because the husband had been borrowing money on that mortgage to fund his gambling habit. Because what was happening was that he was coming home from work and going to the local club, gambling, and had been gambling quite a lot of money and had borrowed heavily against that investment unit, and now the bank was threatening to sell it.
Wow. So she's got 2 small children. She probably works reduced hours because of this. She's not across all the finances, and she gets this big shock about what she thought was giving her some financial security. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, she didn't have any choice. Eventually she had to sell the unit, of course. But the thing is that, partners aren't necessarily going to be upfront and say, oh, yes, I've got a gambling problem. They won't say that. But if she had looked occasionally to look at the bank accounts and the statements and taken some interest in these things, had the conversations a lot sooner, she could possibly have taken some preventative action a lot sooner.
And I guess she was also in the position where, yes, she might be earning some superannuation for her future, but much less.
Much less. And that's, of course, really an issue.
Yes, there's a huge gap, of course, between women's and men's superannuation, even now. I think it's around nearly 30%.
That's right.
Can women do anything to catch up on that, especially in later life?
It's really hard. I mean, that's why we need to keep fighting for equal pay for equal jobs, basically. There's not much you can do except perhaps keep working. But it's a really conflicted time because there are health issues that often arise as you get older. There's also caring responsibilities, either caring for your own parents, if you've got grandchildren, providing some assistance to your children so that they can continue to work. It isn't that easy to just say, oh, well, I think I'll just keep working.
So there are some things you can do, but really some are quite challenging in terms of earning extra income to contribute to more to super. So what should the priority be?
Well, I still think that basically older women need to look after themselves, and that having a home, no matter how small it is, no matter where it is, even if it's not in your most desired area and it's not, exactly what you want, that paying out your mortgage, I think, is the most important step that a woman can take. I would say that you should access your superannuation because our whole aged care system is based on owning your own home. Our pension does not take your home where you live into account. So it's a tax-free option. You don't get pay capital gains tax on it. Your children just, if they inherit it outright. So paying out the mortgage on the house where you live is the most important thing. And there's also a psychological benefit to not having this black cloud of a loan hanging over your head when your income is not going to be the same as what it used to be.
So that should be the priority.
My view,
yes. And we do have a pension system, and
Yes.
some people are eligible for the part pension too, which can be really helpful.
Yes. Obviously it can, but there's a reality to all of this, that the aged care pension is used by, I think it's about 65% of all retirees actually get some part of a pension. And it's very important for women because start off with that you don't have as much super to begin with, but there's also the fact that you are likely to be living alone for a good part of your life, and you're also going to be living at least 5 years longer than your male partners. That's how the stats go.
So, Alice, there's a few things we definitely need to do to improve our financial health, our financial well-being. We need to be fully across our finances. We need to understand our incomings, our outgoings.
Yep.
We need to budget. We need to think about the bucket system that you suggested. We need to learn online banking if we don't do that already. We need to seek help and advice with that from trusted people. And also we need to be super vigilant about scams. We must say that.
Yes.
Pay off debts is a priority so we don't have to pay interest. And hopefully we might have a little bit left to have some fun with after all that.
Yeah, and thinking about, we're having Mother's Day this month, and it's a time when grandmothers and mothers and daughters should be speaking with each other. And I think it's important for older women to emphasise to their younger women that they need to be in control. They need to be interested in their financial situation and to try and be in control of it. for the future.
Well, thank you, Alice. I think once again you've given us some important homework to get on with. And I guess, like our other topics, being informed is being in control. Now, next episode, a related topic. Suddenly single. Now, unfortunately, it's going to happen to many of us. How do we cope and how do we thrive as a single person? I'm Amanda Armstrong, and this has been a production of the Older Women's Network of New South Wales.